I consider American Beauty to be a perfect movie.
And the Oscar goes to Kevin Spacey in American Beauty.
You have this really deep, complex story shown to us in a very simple, accessible way. That's why I think American Beauty is a 5 out of 5 motion picture.
And the Oscar goes to Alan Ball for American Beauty.
It was the best moment of the whole process, the moment that I first showed it to Stephen. And, you know, he likes to watch movies alone, so I was pacing up and down the corridor, you know. And finally I got word, you know, Stephen's finished the movie, and I went in and he stood up and he had tears in his eyes and he said, "You've made a classic movie."
The Oscar goes to Sam Mendes for American Beauty.
I know I went on a little bit of a riff there, but I really like this one.
The Oscar goes to American Beauty.
I am going to give American Beauty 3.5 out of 4.
And the Oscar goes to Conrad L. Hall for American Beauty.
Sam, you are the best, huh? When you showed up looking exactly like Orson Welles, I thought to myself, oh my God, you know? And now I know he's like Orson Welles.
What can I even say about this movie? Lots, I guess, because I'm making this video, but I guess it's more how can I talk about American Beauty? I mean, this movie was a phenomenon, whether you liked it or not, and there are definitely some people who do not like this movie.
It's like there's this incredibly benevolent force that wants me to know there's no reason to be afraid. Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world, it makes my heart burst.
It's just some trash blowing in the wind! Do you have any idea how complicated your circulatory system is?
Even so, American Beauty is my favorite movie of all time. But not only is it my favorite movie, it's gotta be close to being a flawless film. And sure, there are a couple of moments of technical flaws, like a continuity error, but the film itself is perfect in its story, characters, music, cinematography, and casting. American Beauty won 89 awards and 5 of them were Oscars, with the film narrowly missing the win in the Best Actress category.
The Oscar goes to Hilary Swank in Boys Don't Cry.
This is Hilary Swank.
Which is a crying shame, because if American Beauty and Annette Bening had won that Oscar like they should have, American Beauty would have been the 4th film to win the Big 5 Oscar categories, among other cinematic greats such as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Silence of the Lambs. This film has everything a visual story should have, and it's superb in all of it. American Beauty is the next Citizen Kane, and that's not an exaggeration. And before we go into this deep dive analysis of the movie, I want to discuss what to expect from this video and how I plan to deliver it. Because not only am I new to articulating my own criticisms of praise in a professional manner, but it is much harder to find and explain what is good rather than what is bad. Looking at something and explaining why it doesn't work in a logical and critical sense is way easier to say than why you enjoy something due to the emotional response it can leave you. Especially when that emotional response gets you so immersed into the story that you forget any of the flaws that the work could possess. I mean, I love Jurassic Park, and really, who doesn't? If you don't like Jurassic Park, you're really in the minority.
Boy, do I hate being right all the time.
But this movie's good enough to where me, and I know plenty of other people, have completely misseen that the T-Rex clearly walks out of his pen. He has no issue just walking like it's flat ground. But the consequence of this is that when Dr. Grant and the kids are pushed up against the pen and they're forced into it, they drop like 50 feet with a car dropping to them. This pen turned into a pit instantly. Somehow the T-Rex walked out of it like it was flat land, but right when the humans get into it, it turns into this giant pit that's gonna kill them. And that's never addressed, and it's a plot hole that really just doesn't make sense. And but Jurassic Park's so good that we completely forget about it. Or, just like me, you don't even notice it, because that's how much you're immersed into the movie. That said, I will be trying to stay as objective as possible when explaining my viewpoints and defending my claim as this film being a perfect movie.
I see.
I have tried to write this review before, and I have learned that with this film especially, I can't go through it in order of plots and characters and etc., since the movie is not high concept or plot heavy, and it's mostly a character study that feels like an anthology at times, focusing completely on different people in their lives. I will be going throughout the movie's production phase and then a scene-by-scene analysis in chronological order. And specifically for this first part of the analysis, I'm going to be comparing American Beauty to other films and TV shows, to highlight how these storytelling and film techniques are universally used to make great pieces of art. This review will not cover or discuss any of the cases or allegations brought upon Kevin Spacey in the last few years, since they don't contribute to the analysis of the film, and especially since Kevin Spacey was neither the screenwriter or the director for this film, and held very little creative control over anything that wasn't his character. I find that the analysis of American Beauty is for the people who have tried to find reviews and discussions on this movie and have had a difficult time, just like I have. And I noticed that if I have found somebody that does talk about American Beauty, it's either a very quick review or a very brief analysis on a specific thing. But most importantly, this analysis is here to remove the seed of doubt that people have had about this movie and whether it's actually good or deserved the praise it received when it was released. A seed of doubt that was planted long before the Kevin Spacey situation.
American Beauty, winner of 5 Academy Awards, including Best Writer, Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Picture of the Year, audiences nowadays can naturally only think of one thing about this movie. 1999 must have been a very slow year. And yeah, okay, fair enough.
And the people that want to talk about American Beauty, including Doug over here, they all had the same thing. And it's always trying to, like, pull shit out their ass. And this is one thing right here. He just said that 1999 must have been a slow year for movies and showed off 2 examples of movies. 1999 can be considered the best year for movies of all time. Okay, here's the slow year he was talking about. Okay, it has Star Wars Episode 1, Toy Story 2, The Green Mile, Fight Club, American Pie, American Beauty, Office Space, Sixth Sense, Sleepy Hollow, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, Galaxy Quest, Mystery Men, South Park the Movie, Being John Malkovich, Matrix, The Mummy, The Virgin Suicide, most importantly, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. And these were movies that I could think of off the top of my head, because 1999 was an amazing year for films to come out. So for a nostalgia critic to try to build up this point, and even if it's just a minor one, this is what the people who are going against American Beauty do. Try to build up this minor point over stuff that's usually even wrong. He gave 2 movies, 2 examples, out of what could be considered the best year for film. I don't understand when people say this is a bad movie, and these people usually dislike the film because they've had wild misinterpretations of the story.
The image of Carolyn hugging all of the clothes in her closet and crying.
Hugging his clothes means she's materialistic.
Or blatantly have plot points confused or wrong.
I think she kills her husband at the end, and that's the end of the movie. That's like the resolution that you've been waiting for, and which is a terrible resolution. It doesn't resolve anything, just like the Lethal Injection doesn't. No character completes any kind of meaningful arc or has any growth.
Look up idiot in the dictionary. You know what you'll find?
Picture me?
No! The definition of the word idiot, which you fucking are.
American Beauty is a film that can be disliked, and all for it if you do dislike it. I dislike Casablanca, I don't really like The Godfather, and God forbid, but I'm not a big fan of Pulp Fiction. I can't even say that without hesitating because it's such a major thing that I don't like Pulp Fiction. But I still appreciate those movies, and I would never say they're bad films, or say these things about them.
Everything was just so, yeah, paint by the numbers. I mean, overall, to me, it's snobby, it's lazy, it's self-important, and worst of all, it is ignorant to its own irony. At least I think. The writer who wrote this does not know shit, just like I don't know shit, just like Lester does not know shit. And this kind of pretentious filmmaking to me is just, it is ignorant and obnoxious, which to me is a sad combination when you think you're saying something really smart, but you're not.
You're not just wrong, you're stupid.
I'll be leaving links in the description to the reviewers that I've shown clips of talking about American Beauty, so you can see their unedited reviews on my subjective input, but I'll still be keeping their clips and words in as much context as possible in this video. Plus, I'll be referring back to these negative reviews throughout the video and addressing their points as the film goes on to see if they actually have any merit or if they're just hollow, like most of the reasons for disliking this movie is. And spoilers, yeah, most of the reasons are hollow.
It's comfortably slow, and its action's direct, but just artistic enough so people can read a little more into it and feel a sense of accomplishment that they could even do that.
Because there's nothing worse in life than being ordinary.
I mean, David Stewart made a 10-minute review on both The English Patient and American Beauty in the same video, and you have to have an opening and outro, so I mean, that's like, what, a 9-minute review on 2 movies?
Let me know what else you want me to review or take a look at or make content on. I do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.
You wanna know what you can do for your next video, David? You can drink some water, cause goddamn, man, your lips sound dry. You need something. Why would you keep that in your outro? And he admitted that he hadn't seen them in a few or good amount of years.
Although, to give you a really complete, good criticism of these movies, I probably have to go back and watch them again. It's been some time since I've seen either one of them, and I may like them now, you know, who knows. But I can tell you why I didn't like them when I watched them, and I think I've seen both of them twice in different years.
So not only is this dude doing 2 movies in one short span, but also he hadn't seen them in a long time. He's trying to describe why he doesn't like them. Not only getting misinterpretations of the film, wild ones.
Kind of promotes like ephebophilia, or like, you know, the sexual attraction to adolescents, the objectification of young girls in particular.
But also, just again, blatant plot points wrong.
I think she kills her husband at the end, and that's the end of the movie.
Move this man!
And clearly this dude is wrong almost the entire time talking about American Beauty. I mean, it's shocking. Like, why would you even post the video? You know you haven't seen the movies in a while. Why not at least rewatch them and talk about them? It's absolutely baffling. It's not like the people here that dislike American Beauty are very profound.
I don't know shit.
They just don't have a lot of good reasons, we'll say that. For the people who have waited for a critique of this film and haven't been able to find it, and for the critics, and I put air quotes there, critics, who say that this film is pretentious, here's my analysis, and hopefully along the way, I'll entertain some of you, and hopefully, maybe I'll be able to persuade some others.
Now, check this out.
American Beauty originally started as a stage play when Alan Ball, who is the writer of the film, started it. He wrote American Beauty while he was contracted as a reoccurring writer for the CBS sitcom Sybil. The concept of American Beauty first came into his head after seeing 2 different newspaper comics depicting the Amy Fisher controversy.
I was working at Adweek and I came out one day and some guy was selling a comic book about Amy and Joey. And on one side was this virginal looking Amy and a big leering, you know, lecherous, predatory Joey. You flip it over and then he's all buttoned up and looks like a good husband and she's all tarted up and you know, predatory, like, you know, slutty vixen. And I remember thinking, the truth is somewhere in between those and we will never know what it is.
This was also at a time when Alan Ball was feeling inadequate with his work in himself and felt that he was sort of in a rut he couldn't get out of.
I think part of what fueled me to write American Beauty was a sense of I needed to get my passion about my work back. It's no accident that that movie is about a guy who is a writer, granted a technical writer for a trade magazine, but he's lost his passion for life and somehow he gets it back. And I think the same thing happened to me in the process of writing that. I just felt like I had to write something that I cared about because I really didn't care about the shows I was working on.
Due to this, American Beauty was a much darker story before the last week of editing when Sam cut out 27 pages worth of script and film. This changed the whole tone and story of the film. We'll get more to that later, so we'll go ahead and avoid spoilers. A while after the script bounced around in Alan Ball's head and he thought about it for months, it was time for him to turn ink into a stage play. The only problem for Alan was that the story was way too big of a scope for a stage play, even if it was a character story and not some action extravaganza. So Alan Ball delved into his first ever screenplay for film, and cranked out a script that would ultimately have some pages removed, but in doing so, turned a movie from a diamond in the rough to the goddamn Pink Panther. The full original script was sent out and discovered by a team of 2 producers named Bruce Cohen and Dan Jinks.
It was the best screenplay that either one of us had ever read. It was so incredibly funny on one hand, yet also quite moving on the other hand.
It was these 2 men that decided that DreamWorks would be the best studio to visualize the highly intriguing and controversial story.
Our hypothesis was that if there was a studio that would want to make this movie, it would be DreamWorks.
This turned out to be the right choice, since DreamWorks co-founder Steven Spielberg was now interested in the script and made sure to see it made.
When Spielberg had come out and stopped and talked with us on that first day, he said, "The script's great, make it right away, don't change a thing."
Bruce Cohen and Dan Jinks also made another detrimental decision, one of the things that would cause this movie if it wasn't put into the right hands, and that was deciding who would helm the director's chair.
We were going to need a director who would attract great actors and would be the ultimate actor's director.
In what could be considered a very risky move, Bruce Cohen and Dan Jinks decided on hiring Sam Mendes for the part.
It really felt like all roads were pointing to Sam.
It was unlike anything I'd ever read before, and you can't say that about many scripts, and we can't say that much writing at all.
Sam Mendes was, at the time, only a stage director and had never worked on a film or TV show, turning this project from not only a movie with a first-time scriptwriter for film, but also a project with a first-time film director.
It's an honor to be here. I want to say thank you to an astonishing young studio, DreamWorks, for having the courage to hire a bloke from English theatre to do a movie about American suburbia and then trusting him.
This decision seems absolutely bewildering, but Bruce and Dan loved the Broadway production of Cabernet that Sam Mendes directed so much, I don't even think they had a seed of doubt that came across their mind.
A couple of things led us to Sam Mendes. We went to see his production of Cabaret in New York, and it was so unique and distinctive and exciting, and he directed this play, this musical, like it was a movie.
These two decisions, deciding on the studio to produce the film and the director to guide it, were almost holistic in how correct they were. Bruce and Dan were able to get the studio and the co-founder of it, one of the most prolific and powerful filmmakers in the world, to let the project have a full creative reign to Sam Mendes with no interference.
This has been viewed as the most auspicious debut of a director since Mike Nichols did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Some movies you wear like a tattoo. I just knew when I saw this picture that Sam had made a movie that I was not going to be able to rub off with soap and water.
This is important because Sam Mendes made a lot of important creative decisions for this movie, even without it being his script.
The script was very, very compelling, and when Sam got hold of it, though, he took it to a whole other level, because Sam became very involved in the further realization of Alan Ball's dream. What Sam brought to this movie was talent. And a tremendous, tremendous insight into the human condition.
It's just like Kevin Spacey said.
And we found real beauty in this extraordinary script by Sam Mendes, by Alan Ball. It feels like he wrote it, though, doesn't it?
Sam Mendes is even one who spoke to Alan Ball and mentioned that Kevin Spacey and Annette Bening would be the two perfect lead roles.
He said, well, who do you see in these roles? And I went, I don't know. And he said, well, my first choices are Kevin Spacey and Annette Bening. And I kind of went, okay, yeah, they're good, get them.
This would continue to be a trend, with Sam hiring the late great Conrad Hall, a seasoned cinematographer who had not only won an Academy Award previously for his cinematography on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but who was also longing to work on this movie and was excited once Sam hired him.
And he said, I'm meeting with Conrad Hall. I thought, that's fantastic. Sometime later, Conrad called me. He was 70, in his early 70s at that point. He called me and he said, Annette, I'm so excited, I got it. And I always remember that because he loved the movie and he really wanted to do it and he wanted to get the job.
Maybe we should shoot this at 30 frames, huh? Wouldn't that be nice? Sexy.
Sam Mendes also implemented a 2-week pre-rehearsal before production, something completely uncommon and almost unheard of in a Hollywood film.
We had 2 weeks rehearsal, which for many is a luxury now, and I thought was a necessity, but I would, coming from the theatre.
We hear now from the cast that they all look back on that 2-week rehearsal period as the time where the movie sort of was hatched.
It was just a great sense of standing on the same side of the fence, looking in the same direction.
And this 2-week pre-rehearsal is praised by the cast, even still to this day, as a crucial part of the creative process and in making American Beauty such an emotionally charged film carried by amazing character chemistry.
We rehearsed for probably 4 or 5 hours for 5 days. That's a lot. And that's where Sam's kind of talent and brilliance came in. He knows how to make a company. He knows how to get people interdependent very quickly.
American Beauty was spared of pre-production and on-set misfortunes, being a movie with almost no complaints by cast and crew. The only production issue that the film had, if you can call it that, was that the movie had to complete all of its main footage and principal photography in a span of 50 days, so they had to work fast. And though this could have been an issue, Sam Mendes is a director who worked with it and improved the movie by doing so. If there had been more days of filming, this shot would have been changed to the original concept of a motionless Angela, still on the ceiling of a pool of water, instead of a siren calling in a sea of rose petals. But American Beauty was lucky and didn't have any real production issues like a movie like this did.
Yeah. We have Anakin. These are his engines, which play the most crucial part in the movie. Right. They're split in two.
I wish I could find any information and footage on the red carpet release of the film, or the hype and buzz it stirred when it was released in theaters. The most I could find is footage from the making of American Beauty featurette that you can witness on your own time, since someone has uploaded that special feature to YouTube themselves. I wasn't born until 2000, so I have exactly 0 memories about this movie when it came out. Sorry I can't show you the hype and release day madness like you'd be able to see for some other movies that came out in 1999. Okay, well, now that we got production out the way, it's time for the hard part.
I need a father who's a role model. Not some horny geek boy who's gonna spray his shorts whenever I bring a girlfriend home from school.
The opening of this movie is a video of a teenage girl talking to a boy who's off screen. The boy is presumably holding the video camera and videotaping her as she rants about her dad, and then this happens.
Someone really should just put him out of his misery.
Want me to kill him for you?
Yeah. Would you?
Not only did we learn a lot about this quick confession tape about this girl and how she feels about her father, but this was one of 3 openings that Sam Mendes had in mind. This was the 3rd one. So let's go ahead and talk about the first 2, and let's see how this one was actually the perfect choice for the movie. I'm trying to edit this part, and all I think about is how I sound like Jeff Goldblum, and I apologize for that. It wasn't my intention. It's just how I speak sometimes. A lot of us. I didn't go to the Nostalgia Critic, how to talk like Jeff Goldblum class.
Hello. Welcome to the Jeff Goldblum Hour. You see, the secret to doing the perfect Jeff Goldblum is to insert ahs, ands, and buts in every sentence.
The first opening was the one I'm guessing Alan Ball originally wrote. It's dark, and you can tell he wrote it when he was angry. Even Alan Ball admitted at one point he wanted his characters to lose. The original prologue is Jane and the boy who's behind the video camera, Ricky, are both found guilty for the murder of Lester Burnham, the same person she's complaining about in the opening of the movie. But that original ending was cut a week before editing was done. Sam Mendes probably realized that after the opening courtroom scene was cut, that the audience wouldn't be expecting to go back there at the end of the movie.
The first was a kind of prologue in which the kids were found guilty of Lester's murder, which was paid off at the end. And we decided to excise that in the last week of editing it in the cutting room, and it changed the whole nature of the film.
So then he was able to cut out all the courtroom stuff without it feeling like scenes were missing, since that plot point just never came up in the final edit. That's where most of those 27 pages went missing, because Sam knew when to end the story. And I'm not saying that Alan didn't know when to end the story, because still, where Sam ends the story, Alan wrote it, and at the same time, Alan agreed with Sam wholeheartedly and knew it was the right creative decision to end the movie where Sam wanted it. So, I mean, there are some people who have a problem with this, thinking that the courtroom scenes are actually needed.
To me, this film is so empty, but the real movie starts at the very end when he gets shot. To me, that should be the opening scene, and then we go from there. There are so many loose ends that need to be tied up with that ending. There are so many interesting questions.
Sorry, retarded.
Oh, that's okay then.
You don't know any better.
Oh, bless your heart.
Jeez, didn't you hear me a second ago? I'm retarded.
Now, obviously, I'm not just gonna throw a clip up of one of these people having an argument on why they don't like American Beauty and then not having a little debate or arguing back. But I'll get more into that later once we get to the end of the movie, which could be a very long time. So until then, I'll tell you how my older brother once told me that the real ending of Jurassic Park starts when they're all in the helicopter riding away from the park. Remember that. It's the same argument for this, and we'll get into that later on too. Why, that's just wrong. It's just not right. At this point, Alan Ball's work had been transformed and worked on by so many people who cared and loved the project that he created. He was a little happier than he was writing it in the background, working as a writer on Sybil. It was a very good decision to cut this scene, since any of the beats that the story does need is handled even better with the actual opening scene. The second alternate opening was one of Lester superimposed while flying through the sky across the suburban streets while dreaming. We still get that kind of opening in the sense right after the film's actual opening, but Lester's not superimposed over the frame and doesn't drop into a sleeping body to wake himself up from his dream. Sam Mendes cut it due to it feeling more like a Charles Dickens type feel, and it's more whimsical than he wanted it to be.
And this shot that you see now was the plate shot that we shot from the helicopter, over which Lester's flying frame was supposed to be superimposed, and we spent 2 days on a blue screen with Kevin Spacey doing this. And then when I put it together, it looked in itself very beautiful, but it felt like the opening to a different movie. It felt whimsical and almost like the opening to a movie by Coen Brothers or something, which I would love, but was inappropriate for the tone of this film.
Now, the actual opening scene and the one we just saw is like the story of Goldilocks, because this one's just right. This is a scene taken straight out of the middle of the film, and this opening hits the same beats as the first alternate opening does, but better. We know Jane's dad is going to die. We know this because of the trailers. We know that Jane's dad's gonna die because of what happens in a minute in his monologue.
I'm 42 years old. In less than a year, I'll be dead.
And we know that Jane and whoever this boy is that are behind the camera are now going to be prime suspects with this footage. We get to see how Jane feels about Lester before Lester comes onto screen.
I need a father who's a role model. Not some horny geek boy who's gonna spray his shorts whenever I bring a girlfriend home from school. What a lame-o. Someone really should just put him out of his misery.
And Lester is a really, really empathetic and sympathetic character. He's very relatable, and we want to see him get out of this rut.
Lester, could you make me a little later, please? Because I'm not quite late enough.
Nice going, Dad.
Both my wife and daughter think I'm this gigantic loser.
It also makes us forget that some of the issues that we have, or some of the issues that Lester has, he put himself in. He's dug a bit of his own rut.
Well, what do you expect? You can't all of a sudden be my best friend just because you had a bad day. I mean, hello. You've barely even spoken to me for months.
And he's also caused his family, his wife and his daughter, to be in a rut. And so this is how his daughter feels about him. And so I think it's really important to open up the film this way, because we can forget that Lester is a bad guy in this, and that he also needs to put in the work to make himself and others happy. This opening has not only shown us there's a whole story going on behind this family and a group of people, but there's most likely a very fatal outcome to it. And all Sam Mendes had to do to shorten this movie by half an hour is take one scene from in the middle of the film and create so much from it. We cut to the title card of the movie with only sounds of a tape being stopped and taken out of the VCR, and bright alluring red letters that say American Beauty over a dark hypnotic background. Even though the title of the film comes from a pink rose named American Beauty, the roses in the film are red. The title just represents the irony of Western culture and suburbia and bringing up the roses as a motif of the film. Roses and the color red both being major motifs in the movie. The color red being the most seductive and charming color to the eye, alluring people to notice if fruits such as apples are ripe, or maybe seeing a classic image of a woman in red.
Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was... Look again.
The point is, the color attracts, and it's the perfect color for a rose. A flower that is so beautiful and widely loved, and everyone would like to have one or give one away. But even though the flower is beautiful, it will prick you with its thorns when you grab it. It will hurt you. You might regret just giving it temptation. The title card is reminiscent to the incited incident. The same dark, trance-like background with the irresistible red in the middle. The two motifs run rampant in this movie, and for good reason. This movie is about lust and it's about want. Two things most people can relate to.
My name is Lester Burnham. This is my neighborhood. This is my street. This is my life.
The film opens with a bird's eye view of a suburban neighborhood as we fly through the air. This is very similar to the second idea for the opening of the movie, with Lester being seen flying through the air before collapsing onto a sleeping body and waking up. But that idea seemed a little too whimsical for the story, not least for this man. We need to see that waking up to live life is an obstacle itself for Lester Burnham, not him dropping into his body like he spent the night in the further and now it's time to wake up. This shot, though, with just the American suburbs in view, not only represents Lester as he is pulled away from his dreams and forced into reality, but establishes the setting and tone immediately. We see the monotony of American suburbs, with its pristine, vibrant image to still keep it attractive, but it being repetitive with boring houses and people that live in it. American Beauty, just like any good story that is held in a specific place, makes the setting into a character itself. One technique that American Beauty uses is the same technique that a show like Weed utilizes.
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's a green one and a pink one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
This overload of suburban repetition and this endless void of similarities forces the audience to feel overwhelmed and experience what the characters have experienced over a long period of time in just a few seconds. This single shot is like putting a whole montage scene in one photograph. Another technique American Beauty uses is never disclosing the name of the city that the characters live in. This could be a disservice to characterizing the setting, but it actually benefits it. We're able to emulate and portray our own cities and towns onto the story, since the suburbs and settings of American Beauty are inherently similar to a lot of the other suburbs, especially Midwest ones. Not naming the setting of a story is a technique used to show that this can all happen anywhere and everywhere. The movie Seven used this technique to set in the idea that a serial killer can attack anywhere in any town, even yours. And American Beauty does the same thing, implying that all these family dysfunctions and conflicts are happening in your hometown too. You just need to look closer.
I'm 42 years old. In less than a year, I'll be dead. Of course, I don't know that yet. And in a way, I'm dead already.
We are told who our main character is, and immediately that he will be dead in less than a year. This is such an interesting choice to let us know that Lester will be dead in a year. Lots of great movies tell us characters will die way before they actually do. It's an amazing way to build suspense and a clock on a certain character. In The Matrix, the Oracle tells Neo that in her prophecy for him, she foresees either Morpheus sacrificing his life protecting Neo, or Neo dies protecting Morpheus. Letting the audience know a character will die early in the story makes us want to try to prevent it from happening. Or like Citizen Kane, at the start of the movie, you just tell the audience that the character's death is upon us. And for the rest of the film, it's a journey on how the character got there. And though as much as we'd like to save Lester, American Beauty definitely takes a closer approach to it like Citizen Kane does.
I'm 42 years old. In less than a year, I'll be dead.
But what I think is funny about this, that unlike Citizen Kane, that it won't let you forget that Charles Foster Kane has passed. In American Beauty, once Lester says he's gonna die, you can completely forget about it until it's brought up again.
Remember those posters that said, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life"? Well, that's true of every day except one. The day you died.
And even then, you completely just can go in one year and out the other. You don't even realize that Lester's gonna die until the moment he does. The story is so good at getting you invested in caring about all the characters and their journeys that you constantly forget that your main character is going to meet his demise at some point during the movie.
Of course, I don't know that yet. And in a way, I'm dead already.
Lester is pried awake by his alarm clock and is not happy about it. Lester's room, his clothes, and his whole house are all drowned and saturated by grays, tans, and browns, sucking away all the color and life it could have. Over all this, you hear the beautiful score composed by Thomas Newman in the song, appropriately named Dead Already. And it's just one of the perfectly composed songs he produced for this film. The song is upbeat, fast-paced, and works with the tempo of the montage, all while fitting in this morning routine setting and not being over the top. And then Lester shares the highlight of his day with us.
Look at me, jerking off in the shower. This will be the high point of my day. It's all downhill from here.
It's the only part of his day that he can feel any pleasure or feel like he has some type of freedom. Lester's biggest moment of control in his life is standing and masturbating in the same spot every day. Lester then stands behind a hallway window watching his wife Caroline perform her gardening chores.
I just love your roses. How do you get them to flourish like this?
Well, I'll tell you. Eggshells and Miracle-Gro.
I've never heard of that.
Man, I get exhausted just watching her.
This opening is so wonderful, showcasing how fantastic Kevin Spacey is Lester Burnham, and Annette Bening as Carolyn Burnham. These two play so well off each other, I still don't understand how Annette Bening didn't get the Best Actress Oscar.
Lester, could you make me a little later, please? Because I'm not quite late enough.
This film hits so many of its hard-hitting beats, and so many of its funny moments because of how these two play off each other, or how they just play off by themselves. I mean, these guys truly portray themselves almost cartoonish, not in the same way that Jim Carrey would, but it's very animated just like that. You wouldn't imagine how goofy this film is at moments, and that's why in my folder I have this underneath dramas, but in the subgenre it's comedy, because I immediately think of this film as just a dark comedy with how funny these two are.
All right, honey, I won't be weird.
Okay.
I'll be whatever you want me to be.
Well, okay.
We have a very healthy relationship.
We see Caroline grows roses, which we've already discussed the main motif of the film, but her roses are one of the only sources of color in this entire world. So no wonder they're so attractive and alluring, especially in a setting where everything is drowned in its grays and browns. But we can tell that to Caroline, the rose represents beauty in its most superficial way. The rose is considered the romantic, special flower. The rose is the diamond of flowers. So Caroline uses it as an image, since she thinks that it will look good, and reflect that look onto her. Her need for control, and especially control in her image, is set in one quick informative line.
That's my wife, Carolyn. See the way the handle on those pruning shears matches her gardening clogs? That's not an accident.
This is all done with Lester behind the window. Alan Ball and Sam Mendes wanted to make a point that Lester was constantly trapped behind windows or anything that looked like bars, to represent Lester trapped in his own prison.
Here's a shot of Lester in the first of a series of jail cells, really. The movie, if anything, is about imprisonment and escape from imprisonment. It's a rites of passage story. And he is constantly seen early on in the movie. I think Alan wrote this almost subconsciously in a series of jail cells, you know, in the shower cubicle and the cubicle at work, in cars. Series of images of Lester trapped behind glass and the kids trapped behind glass and moving within frames. And this was something I wanted to bring out in the film.
We hear a dog barking, and it's owned by the couple next door, Jim and Jim.
That's our next door neighbor, Jim. And that's his lover, Jim.
This couple not only shares the same name and sex, but they also share the same attire and personality.
Just a little something from our garden.
Except for the pasta, we got that at Falacci's.
Right. It's unbelievably fresh. You drop it in the water and it's done.
This was inspired by Alan Ball knowing a straight couple he lived by who wore the same outfits. Specifically in the case of Jim and Jim, this represents the repetition and monotony of the suburbs, and how the look and people can just be copy and pasted. We then get this line from Lester.
Man, I get exhausted just watching her. She wasn't always like this. She used to be happy. We used to be happy.
It's poignant and it's hard-hitting. This line tells us so much about the two of them. They were once madly in love. They both were once happy and confident with their own abilities and bodies. But now the two are husk. One is the living embodiment of depression, and the other is a personification of self-consciousness. And that image-oriented lifestyle that Caroline pressures herself under also puts insecurities on their daughter Jane.
My daughter Jane. Only child.
Like I said earlier, the score composed by Thomas Newman is perfect for the film. Right here when we transition to Jane, the score ends after we cut from Caroline and starts back up when we cut to Jane. It's quick and subtle, but pairs perfect with the more somber and slow pace of the music that comes when Lester is describing Jane. The music feels sincere along with what Lester's saying. He isn't being spiteful like he was describing Caroline. You can actually see it right here. Thomas Newman puts in the music how Lester feels. All this yellow, which goes over, is because how spiteful he's talking about Caroline. But then there's the drop. And all of this is all him focused on his only daughter, Jane. And during this is when he's talking very sincerely. He's being honest with a very sad truth, and something that he wholeheartedly believes in. And it's not really advice, but he's being sincere. Until it cuts back to Caroline, who's being rude and contemptful to both Jane and Lester. Jane, played by Thora Birch, is the daughter of Lester and Caroline Burnham. When we cut to Jane's room, she is looking at her savings, looking at breast surgery websites and procedures. We immediately get the sense that Jane is self-conscious, and that's before Lester tells us.
Janie's a pretty typical teenager. Angry, insecure, confused. I wish I could tell her that's all going to pass. But I don't want to lie to her.
Only one character is spared from the sediment, and we'll get there when it comes up, but this idea that no one gets over their shame in ourselves and controls who we are is a big theme in this movie. But unlike the rest of the house and this world, Jane's room is doused in warm and striking colors, feeling vibrant and welcoming in her room. Jane's room is a clear indicator that Jane has the capability to find happiness. And even if Jane doesn't even know that she wants happiness, her room subconsciously tells us that she needs it. We then cut to a demanding and frustrated Caroline yelling at everyone to get out of the house and into the car for school and work. Jane comes out in her normal attire, and we get what we can assume is the normal response from Caroline.
Jane, honey, are you trying to look unattractive?
Yes.
Congratulations, you've succeeded admirably.
It's clear where Jane's insecurities stem from. Unlike Caroline, though, Jane's insecurities don't pressure and push her to be image conscious. Instead, Jane's insecurities make her feel small and want to be removed from the picture altogether. This is clear with baggy, unrevealing, dark clothes, and Jane's closed-off attitude about her appearance, as if it's an enemy she's waging war with.
It's weird watching myself. I don't like how I look.
Can't believe you don't know how beautiful you are.
Look, I'm not gonna sit here for that shit.
And then we get a lovable Lester coming out with the house to do this.
Lester, could you make me a little later, please? Because I'm not quite late enough.
Nice going, Dad.
This part of the scene right here was actually filmed and added during one of the last days as an add-on to the opening monologue. It represents the distance and strain that's really been put on between Lester and Caroline, and it's topped off with this look of just utter disappointment and disdain for her husband. It's not like Jane's impressed by her father either.
Both my wife and daughter think I'm this gigantic loser. And they're right.
It cuts to Lester sleeping in the back seat, slouched and pathetic, looking like a child too tired on his way to school while his daughter and wife sit up front in silence from each other. Even the Fitz talk to her in their car ride to school, and they're definitely not a close family.
Well, it is. Yeah, you're right. Don't placate me like I'm your mother, boy.
And though the scene opens with Lester saying that he will literally die, and at the moment he is emotionally dead, but the end of the scene is a glimmer of hope of Lester saying that he can restore the happiness that he once had. And to support that sentiment, we even have a paralleling shot right here of the suburban sky, which when we first saw it a few minutes ago at the opening, it was Lester's escape while he was sleeping, the only time he found happiness when he was unconscious. And even though he is sleeping in the backseat at the end of the scene, that's because this is the start of his journey. This shot of the sky right here tells us that he can get that same happiness he has when he's unconscious into his real world. And Lester admits that he can do that too.
I know I didn't always feel this sedated. But you know what? It's never too late to get it back.
We then cut to Lester at his job working for the Media Monthly magazine. We immediately see his face reflected upon the computer screen, with whatever numbers and logs he has on the computer screen going vertically in columns. This is another piece of imagery to represent the jail Lester has put himself in, with his work being one of his main prisons. And there's no wonder why. This is one of the dullest places in Lester's life.
Hello, this is Lester Burnham from Media Monthly magazine. I'm calling for Mr. Tamlin, please. Well, we're all under a deadline here. See, there's some basic information about your product launch that isn't even covered in your press release.
We cut to a wide shot to see basically everyone doing the same thing, in gray, colorless cubicles. And this motif of a soul-sucking workplace runs rampant throughout 1999. Audiences see it in films like The Matrix, American Beauty, Fight Club, and Office Space. And in every movie, they're not only working in an office environment, but they're specifically working in cubicles. An obvious metaphor for a cube-shaped prison trapping them in life. And obviously all these writers were feeling trapped, and when they released these projects in 1999, the audiences must have felt it too, because they connected with these films, and they're some of the most popular films in 1999. Oh no, I'm sorry, the only two movies released in 1999 were Baby Geniuses, whatever the hell else Montage said. But not only is the workplace life draining, so is the work. A writer who has spent the last decade and a half working for a magazine company with no way to the top, no matter the quality of the work he puts in or the hours.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask you a question? Who is Tamlin? Does he exist? Because he doesn't ever seem to come in. Yeah, okay, I'll leave my number.
Lester's boss Brad comes up to Lester to ask for a private talk, and Lester delivers one of the best lines in the whole film.
Lester Burnham. Thank you.
Hey, Les. You got a minute?
For you, Brad, I got 5.
A voice oozing with force and sincerity, with a quiet rage building up behind those eyes, and it's topped with Lester's goofy animated facial expression. I mean, I gotta be right about that point, even the director agrees with me.
This is one of my favourite lines in the movie. Yeah. For you, Brad, I've got 5. Harry Sherman.
Fun fact about this scene is that the set designer of American Beauty, Naomi Shohan, added the Look Closer poster to Lester's cubicle as part of the decor, but it became the tagline for the film. The Look Closer tagline is so powerful, and it's awesome that Naomi was able to put in something that she knew made sense and maybe people wouldn't even notice, but it just got so much appreciation from the cast and crew, and especially because of the meaning it has behind it. I don't even have to explain the meaning because the trailer will show it, and that's just another great thing to show that they loved it so much it's part of the trailer, and it just encapsulates the film so perfectly. You know straight on what it means. Brad explains to Lester that the company needs to make necessary budget cuts, and that means cutting loose a few employees if they have to.
You gotta free up some cash. You gotta spend money to make money, right?
Exactly.
Like the time that Mr. Flournoy used the company MasterCard to pay for that hooker, and then she used the card numbers and stayed at the St. Regis for, what was it, like 3 months?
The problem about this to Lester is that most likely a handful of hardworking employees with years of experience and loyalty to this company under their belt are going to be let go due to some promiscuous behavior from the higher-ups.
It's unsubstantiated
That's
gossip.
$50,000. That's somebody's salary. That's somebody who's going to get fired because Craig has to pay women to fuck him.
Jesus. I mean, calm down. Nobody's getting fired yet.
Now, this outburst is very unexpected to Brad, and it's honestly a little shocking to Lester too. Brad has probably seen Lester to be a hardworking, probably even a little docile and zombie-like, and ready to be told what to do just to make the day go by easier with no conflict. Yet here Lester is, not only standing up for himself, but talking down to his bosses as well. And this is the first pinch point in the film, a clear sign that Lester needs to break out of the lie and the mold that he's put himself into, and start living differently altogether. And just like any good first pinch point, it shows the character's potential to break through the lie, but also shows how big the lie is and how easy it is to slip back into it.
I've been writing for this magazine for 14 years, Brad. You've been here how long? A whole month?
I'm one of the good guys, Les. I'm trying to level with you. This is your one chance to save your job.
And throughout this entire outburst, you can see Lester is nervous, and his body's shaking, he's fidgeting, and he just keeps playing with that stupid fucking pencil with that stupid rubber eraser on it. And Lester's 42 years old, he's not 8, and he doesn't have a toddler child, so where did he even get that eraser? I don't know, if he had to go out his way to get that. But that just shows how much of a fucking loser Lester is, that he has a fucking rubber toy tip eraser. And so not only does Lester still not confidently present himself, but Lester backs down almost immediately, losing this battle against Brad. The shot lingers a second, showing the defeat on Lester's face, and then immediately cuts to him nagging to Caroline about her on the ride home from work. And to top all this off, Caroline could not care less about Lester's work problems.
There's no decision, you just write the damn thing.
Well, you don't think it's weird and kind of fascist?
Possibly, but you don't want to be unemployed.
Oh, well, all right. Let's just all sell our souls and work for Satan because it's more convenient that way.
Oh, could you be a little bit more dramatic, please, huh?
It's not like what Caroline says here isn't reasonable, because it is, but you can tell that she just wants the conversation to move on and Lester to keep his job and not whine about it. Lester works a soulless job all day to come home to a family that doesn't seem like really cares about him, and part of this is his fault. The job, the family, the connections he has, these are not all other people's issues. Lester has put himself in this hole too, which is why Lester will need to change. But the point of this is that this is the life that Lester is living, and it shows you why he's in this hole, even if part of the reason that he's in it is because he dug it. As they pull into the driveway with Caroline shutting Lester down, Caroline gets pretty upset seeing that the house next door has been sold off to new neighbors. I guess this usually wouldn't be an issue, but when you work in real estate and the house being sold off is being sold from your major competitor, it makes Caroline upset.
So, we finally got new neighbors. You know, if the Lomans had let me represent them instead of the real estate king, that house would never have sat on the market for 6 months.
This is a good script reversal, because now Caroline is the one who has to vent and complain about work. She's the one who's frustrated, and now we get to see how her husband reacts to it. And her husband reacts the same way she did. Apathetic, he just doesn't care. I think the worst part about these two is that they both play devil's advocate. And during this devil advocate, Lester brings up why the next door neighbors didn't want their very own neighbor selling their house, why they didn't trust Caroline to do so.
Well, they were still mad at you for cutting down their sycamore.
Their sycamore? Come on, a substantial portion of the root structure was on our property. You know that. How can you call it their sycamore? I wouldn't have the heart to just cut down something.
Both of them couldn't resist just keeping their mouths shut and just letting their partner vent out a little bit and get some steam out. And it shows how unhappy they're making themselves and the family, and it's gonna get showcased in the very next scene. I'm gonna warn you before we head into the scene, it's fucking good. It's good. Scenes like this are what separate those little boy movies from the grown men ones. So let's break down how A Dinner with the Burnhams can be such a perfect scene for script and visual storytelling. This first dinner scene opens up with pictures of the Burnham family, and especially Jane when she was younger. Before the dinner starts, the last picture we see in the family photo was taken very recently, and we can tell their smiles are fake. We know from the previous scenes that these characters do not like each other. Those hands and physical contact in that photo is a simulated family relationship that is not there. That is what this tagline "Look Closer" represents. Classical type opera music plays in the background as they eat, and we don't even need to be told it's Caroline's music to figure that one out. The table is set perfectly, and it's with roses placed in the middle. It looks like a flawless family photo on its own. The table is purposely extended, making sure that there's more than enough space to separate the family members and show the distance that's grown between them. This is a technique that Sam Mendes learned in theater, but it's also a perfect visual storytelling device to show a broken relationship. Going back to Citizen Kane, in that film, the table extends longer and longer, continuously separating Charles Foster Kane and his wife, highlighting the deterioration of their marriage. It's used in the same regard here, but this time it's showcasing a dying family. Another visual story method used here is the slow dolly push-in from the outside the dining room and closer to the Burnhams. I know Sam Mendes credits the shot to ordinary people, but this voyeuristic filming style is a classic technique and it goes back decades, even being used for full feature-length films like Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. We get the picture-perfect dinner setup, and we feel like eavesdroppers hiding behind the wall. From just the view on the outside, and what we see is a nice, well-made family dinner. But when we and the camera pull in closer and get put cleanly in frame with the family, behind that flawless facade, we see nothing but dysfunction.
Mom, do we always have to listen to this elevator music?
No. No, we don't. And as soon as you've prepared a nutritious yet savory meal that I'm about to eat, you can listen to whatever you like.
The first words to break the silence of their family dinner is a passive-aggressive remark from Jane. And Caroline's reaction on this line is what sums up her character and why she acts the way she does. Caroline is the one who made the dinner, made sure it was perfectly cooked while being healthy. She's probably the person who cleaned the house in that dining room, who was the one who set the table, bought the decorative candles, and grew and cut the roses that stand beautifully in the center of the table. And she does that while working every day. I think we've all seen our parents bust their asses off and come home from work, and they can get frustrated easily if they don't feel appreciated. I bet you felt that way too before. Caroline not only feels like she is doing all the work, but more importantly, she feels like her family doesn't appreciate her and all the things that she does. Caroline is a perfectionist who strives for control. I never really understand when people say they don't like Carolyn.
He has a wife that is really uptight and sort of manic and calculated, but deep down she's very lonely and sad, and of course there has to be a scene where they show that so you can feel the sympathy.
And of course, like, he has his wife, and his wife is just like a, I don't know, like an old nag.
She is a compelling character on her own, but not only that, she is highly relatable. I think people don't like her because she shows how we can act when we turn spiteful and angry, especially when those feelings spawn from feelings of being underappreciated. After the petty confrontation between mother and daughter, it's time to see how the father-daughter relationship is going. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not going much better.
So, Janie, how was school?
It was okay.
Just okay?
No, Dad. It was spectacular.
Well, you want to know how things went at my job today?
Lester did not care to ask about Janie's day. He just wanted to open with that, try to manipulate her so she would care when he started to rant. And she figured this out immediately. It's kind of like when people ask you what presents you got for the holidays, just immediately start talking about the shit they got.
They've hired this efficiency expert. This really friendly guy named Brad. How perfect is that? And he's basically there to make it seem like they're justified in firing somebody because they couldn't just come right out and say that, could they? No, that would just be too honest. And so they've asked us. You couldn't possibly care less, could you?
Lester then proceeds to rant about his day until...
Well, what do you expect? You can't all of a sudden be my best friend just because you had a bad day. I mean, hello. You've barely even spoken to me for months.
And that's all we needed to know. The first time Lester has spoken to her in a while, and it's just so she can shut up and listen to him complain. And just when Jane leaves the dining room and it seems like that could be it, we then get to see the loving husband-wife dynamic.
Oh, what? Your mother of the year? You treat her like an employee.
What? What?
We knew the Burnhams were dysfunctional and a little apathetic towards each other throughout Lester's monologue, but now we're seeing it, and it's worse than he described. With Janie, Lester and Caroline are condescending, but with each other, they get spiteful. And right when Lester has a moment to stand up for himself, he backs down again, this time to his wife.
I'm gonna get some ice cream.
Lester shuts down, avoiding the confrontation with his wife, and cowering to the kitchen. I love how saying, "You treat her like an employee," under your breath will vaguely sound like, "I'm gonna get some ice cream," while also being completely different at the same time, because it's just a pathetic response that Lester would give. And as Lester avoids Caroline, he goes to talk to Jane while she's washing her plate. Lester tries to open up what happened with the two of them a couple minutes ago.
Jamie, I'm sorry I haven't been more available. You know, you don't always have to wait for me to come to you.
Oh, great. So now it's my fault?
I didn't say that. It's nobody's fault.
The conversation is awkward, with neither of the two being able to express how they really feel towards each other, or about the slum that they're in because of how they feel about themselves. We then informally meet Ricky, the next door neighbor who's been eavesdropping on the family with us. He is filming them on a camera, zoomed in and intrigued by the family drama and what he and the audience can see as two clearly insecure people in a broken relationship. Lester looks out the kitchen window, suspecting of someone watching, but Ricky is gone and no one is there. Lester throws the hand towel down next to a picture of him, Caroline, and Jane on a carnival ride. This is so important. They're happy. They're not fake smiling like in these photos or posing for the camera. They are genuinely happy. These scenes open with a picture-perfect family portrait that is nothing but staged lies and fake emotion, leading to an awkward and cold-hearted family dinner. Compare that to the same ending with two people being lost and vulnerable, and the last shot shows this family being spontaneous and having fun together. A real family photo, taken when they were happy. If they could actually open up and be vulnerable and not shut each other out, they could be like this again. Having this scene open and end with the shots of the family photos, showing the juxtaposition of how they are, was not only flawless, but it's the cherry on top to a perfect scene. This movie does not need to wait for its inciting incident to get the audience hooked. If someone wasn't already intrigued and interested in this movie just by that amazing opening monologue by Lester, then I don't believe by the time they actually see this family in work that they don't want to see another scene where this family either reconciles or argues again. By the end of this scene, this movie's got its claws in you. The next day, we see Caroline setting up the house that she's been hired to sell. She plants her sign in the lawn and pulls out the cleaning supplies from her car, and then our eyes come across this. This is not the second time we've seen Buddy Kane sell a house, and we can tell by this sign that he is a top estate realtor in this city. Unlike Caroline's cold blue sign that she puts in the lawn, Buddy's is red and welcoming. Unlike Caroline's sign that says Burnham and Associates, Buddy has his full name on the sign and nobody else's. Not only that, but Buddy has a snaggy slogan, the king of real estate, and a giant picture of his face to go along with it. His sign is everything that Caroline's sign wishes it could be. The good publicity that Buddy's sign comes with is the type of image that Caroline strives for, and Buddy is doing it much better than her. I don't even blame Caroline for being upset, because I'd be looking at Buddy Kane's sign like it was Paul Allen's business card.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
And now Caroline enters the house, frustrated but determined to sell it.
I will sell this house today.
She strips down into lingerie that we can tell has been used for its intended purpose in a long time, and is now repurposed into a maid's gown. Caroline and her roses were just a microcosm of Caroline's need for perfection and success, but watching her set up this house with meticulous detail highlights this characteristic now.
I will sell this house today.
Welcome. I'm Carolyn Burnham.
We cut through this fast-paced montage of Caroline trying to persuade and sell the house to potential buyers, and no one is impressed. We cut through the room she's cleaned and the unamused reactions to the state of the house and the home in general.
The ad said this pool was lagoon-like. There's nothing lagoon-like about it. Except for maybe the bugs. There aren't even any plants out here.
What do you call this? Is this not a plant? If you have a problem with the plants, I can always call my landscape architect.
Caroline spent all day in this house, and not one person even gave it a second thought once walking through the front door. This scene was originally supposed to go on longer and see more of the customers' reactions, but the decision to cut these interactions short works better with the idea of it being a non-stop workday for Caroline, and an exhausting time trying to sell this house. The fast-paced editing also suits way better for the tempo of the music that plays during the scene.
I'm Carolyn Burnham.
This living room is very dramatic. Wait till you see the native stone fireplace.
A simple cream could really lighten things up. You could even put in a skylight.
After multiple failed attempts to sell the house, it's time to lock up and call it a day. We see how Caroline, a person who tried to make this house perfect and had no control today, reacts to her own failure. She literally beats herself up over it, showing us how deep Caroline has embedded herself in this idea of success and a good image, and how far she'll go to want to keep it. And this moment comes while the audience is still laughing about the montage that they just saw. The jump from comedy to drama is unexpected and it successfully gets the reaction that the movie wants us to have. One moment you're laughing from the jokes, then all of a sudden you notice how darker lit and closed off this frame is. And you're subconsciously kind of awkwardly processing it all and realizing that the laughing right now seems kind of inappropriate as you start to see Caroline hit herself. I think everybody goes from that jump of emotion the first time they see this part. This is also a part where I have to bring up one of my fellow reviewers again. DeepFocusLens says this while describing Carolyn.
He has a wife that is really uptight and sort of manic and calculated, but deep down she's very lonely and sad. And of course there has to be a scene where they show that so you can feel the sympathy.
Are you retarded? Poop in the shoes. Are you a retarded person? Poop
on the shoes! What this lady just said right here has got me so bent out of shape, I gotta make an unorganized list just to talk about it, okay? So, Johnny, switch it to the Mario Kart music. That statement's got me so riled up, I gotta make an unorganized list just to talk about it. Okay, so, Johnny, turn that Mario Kart music up. There is so much here to talk about, I have to make an unorganized list just to cover it. Number 1. You and I both know that if they hadn't shown this scene, you would be complaining that the film would be telling and not showing information about Caroline and how she's insecure. So let's not pretend that that wouldn't be the case, and let's just be happy at the scenes here. Number 2. The purpose of this scene is to flesh out Caroline and have a side of her that she hides from everybody, being exposed to the audience alone. For the viewers who haven't seen the more nuanced characteristics of Caroline's insecurities, they now get to see them at full force, and it helps them relate to the character. I don't understand why this is a cliche or bad filmmaking in your regards. Number 3. And to continue off that, I know it's not bad filmmaking. I don't know why I'm asking you that. When you have a character like Carolyn who has a lot of screen time, but always seems antagonistic during those moments, a simple one scene revealing more about their character does wonders in creating a three-dimensional person in a movie. I mean, the two most obvious examples to compare Caroline to are Michael Myers and Leatherface. These are two characters in their respective movies who have plenty of screen time, but usually aren't being seen in good light, and they get some scenes that flesh them out for it. In the original Halloween film, after Michael Myers has stabbed and impaled Bob onto the kitchen wall with a single chef's knife, he tilts his head. He tilts his head in admiration with childlike curiosity towards the work he has just accomplished. We've seen Michael throughout this whole film, a silent, menacing presence that is always watching. But right here, with a moment to himself, and with the only other person in the vicinity who could ever see him now dead, we see Michael be Michael for a few seconds, before snapping back into the shape again. Those few seconds, though, have made people talk about this scene since the years that it has come out, and that's for good reason. I mean, the same thing happens in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Leatherface reacts more like Caroline in this scene. After 3 random strangers have wandered into the Sawyer home uninvited, Leatherface has attacked them and followed his family orders to hurt them and kill them. But it doesn't seem like this is a pleasurable pastime for him. Leatherface isn't a symbol of unstoppable evil. He's a person, and this single scene of Leatherface contemplating and freaking out about what what's going on in his life right now shows us this about him. One scene can add so many layers to a character, and I fail to understand your logic on why this is such a problem, especially when it's used to explore a character who the audience may not like at the moment. It seems like a natural and good story structure thing to do to me. And with a screenwriting book like Story right behind you, I would assume you know what good story structure is. And going off of story structure, that's why this scene is so perfectly placed in the film. It's 10 minutes in. We have already seen Caroline's self-conscious image and how she pushes people away. She's pushed the audience away. She forces her image of success onto other people and onto herself, and nobody likes it. But now we're 10 minutes into the movie and we see how she truly is. And she is just as broken as any other character in this movie. It's just like Lester said back in his opening monologue.
Angry, insecure, confused. I wish I could tell her that's all going to pass, but I don't want to lie to her.
Everybody in this film is this way, except for literally one character, but Caroline's not that one. She is broken and defeated. The worst part is that Caroline strives for this image of success, and she thinks that's what's going to build her up in her life, but really it's this thing that's destroying her and all the relationships. You can say you don't like Carolyn, and I really want to understand why, but you can say that. But it's just straight up not true to say that this scene is bad or hurts the film. I mean, hell, Annette Bening was able to do this all in one take, because that's how invested she was as the character of Carolyn Burnham.
We did this in one take. Annette did this. I thought, this is it. It's in the movie. I'm not going to change it. And again, look how beautifully lit it is. Those blinds behind her and the light just touching her face. This is quite upsetting to shoot, actually. We're all stuck in the other room watching the monitor screen. I kind of nervously ventured out at the end of the scene. I mean, she was... she's extraordinary.
American Beauty does something very subtle with its script structure, if Alan Ball did this consciously or not. And I don't know if he did this consciously or not, since he won't say a goddamn word on his own commentary track. I mean, say something, my man. You're the writer of this film, yet one of the only pieces of commentary I get is about Bono during a U2 concert.
You were defending him. You love him. You want to have like 10,000.
You want to have like 10,000 of his babies.
That actually, I heard somebody yell at Bono at a U2 concert.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did she say?
She stood up, she went, "I love you, Bono. I want to have like 10,000 of your babies."
Worst part was, I already knew about this fact piece at IMDb years ago, so it wasn't even new info. Alan Ball introduces the Burnhams and their conflict in such a well-paced manner, the structure can almost go unnoticed. The film opens with the Burnhams' morning routine and then showcases Lester's daily life and struggles. We then see the Burnhams' evening routine of awkward and aggressive conversation, and then an isolated scene to understand Carolyn, and now Janie gets a scene for herself. This is all within the first 11 minutes of the film. Even someone like DeepFocusLens will admit that with all the problems she has with the movie, its script and pacing is not one.
Another thing that I do feel is really of note is just the overall structure with it. I'm not crazy about the structure, maybe more in detail in certain areas, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But I will say overall, it is a very tightly constructed script. There isn't a lot of fat to trim, and I think that's a really good thing. Most of the scenes do work towards the payoff of the film, and it does have kind of a nice climax that builds into that third act.
When we cut to Janie to see what's going on with her, she's at the high school basketball game. She's a part of the Dancing Spartanettes, the school cheerleading team. Jane looks around the gym, searching for her parents. Janie desperately wants to have a loving relationship with her mom and dad, but would lie about it to herself and everyone around her just so she wouldn't have to admit how she feels. This scene is also where we have a quick, almost non-existent introduction to Angela.
What are you looking for? My parents are coming tonight. They're trying to, you know, take an active interest in me.
Gross. I hate it when Mom does it.
This is the second time we've had a more informal introduction to a character like we did with Ricky 2 scenes ago. Alan Ball does really well planting seeds in your head for characters or plots that will come up into the future. And we're going to discuss more about this in part 2 when we discuss more about the idea of story structure and how it applies to this film. Angela is a 16-year-old teenager just like Jane, but we can tell Angela is much more Pierce focused than Jane is, fixing and playing with the hair for the most part of the scene. Jane and Angela are so uninterested in the game, you wonder why they're even there. That's the whole point of this film so far. You go to high school basketball games and have parents come to watch because that's normal. Or you go to work and hate life, and wake up and hate yourself because that's what you do. Like I said, this idea where you're just cogs in the machine and we're just societal zombies was a huge theme back in the 90s. Unlike other films, American Beauty showcased this through all perspectives, not just the working class man. Luckily for Jane, Lester and Carolyn are on their way to the basketball game, and funny enough, it's while the two argue if Jane truly wants them there or not.
Well, what makes you so sure she wants us to be there? Did she ask us to come?
Of course not. She doesn't want us to know how important this is to her. But she's been practicing her steps for weeks.
Well, I'll bet money she's gonna resent it.
Lester says that she'll resent them for showing up, while Carolyn defends that Jane just doesn't want to admit that she wants them to come. And of course, we know it's the latter, with Jane desperately searching for them at the game. But what's more interesting here is that even though Lester's arguments are based on Jane not wanting them to go, he's only making the arguments because he doesn't want to be there. I believe that one of the important reasons why Sam Mendes had the film open with Jane and Ricky is that we get a really poor perspective of Lester straight off the bat, from someone else's point of view, and someone close to him. Lester is extremely sympathetic, and we understand his struggles and sedation towards life throughout the entire film, and we more importantly understand why he starts to change for the better, even if it isn't always for the right reasons. And as the film goes on, especially in the next couple minutes, we know not everything Lester does or thinks is right. But since these reasons make him so sympathetic, we can forgive him almost instantaneously when he does these flawed things. This scene right here reminds us that Lester needs to put in the work for his family. Lester has already had a talk with Jane the night before. You'd think that he would want to try to mend the relationship that the two have already admitted needs to be worked on. Instead, he would rather watch TV and seem miserable about not being able to do so.
Well, I'll bet money she's gonna resent it, and I'm missing the James Bond marathon on TNT.
Lester!
Jane has the right to be mad at her dad, since this is how he always acts, and we understand that Lester's in a deep depression, but he needs to undergo some serious change for his wife and child. This is also one of the couple scenes that we see Carolyn being a lot more maternal and caring towards Jane than just callous. She argues and defends that Jane wants them at the game, and Carolyn says that the reason why she wants the two to go is because she doesn't want Lester and Jane's relationship to suffer any more damages. Lester replies with his honest belief, and it stuns Carolyn.
She hates me.
She's just willful.
She hates you, too.
I love the head turn she does here, because throughout the whole movie, we see that Carolyn is so image self-conscious, and that she also wants Janie to see her that way as well. Carolyn hates when Lester's behavior is reflected upon her, and she still wants Jane's respect and admiration, even if Carolyn doesn't really understand that she's berating Jane most of the time.
Jane, honey, are you trying to look unattractive?
Yes.
Congratulations, you've succeeded admirably.
Throughout all of Carolyn's flaws throughout the story so far, she is the one who cares about Jane more and cares about keeping the family together the most. And that comment that Jane hates Carolyn does hurt her. Lester and Carolyn show up to the game late, interrupting and surrounded by parents who came and supported their kids throughout the whole thing. I mean, the worst part here is that Lester's already planning on watching the halftime show and then is leaving once the cheerleaders are done. Lester's such a loser, he's got a trip while doing this.
Now for your halftime entertainment, Rockwell High's award-winning Dancing Spartanettes!
We can leave right after this, right?
What's about to happen is called the Inciting Incident. Now this is the moment of no return for our main character, and this moment will affect everyone's lives for the rest of the film. A more technical explanation of the Inciting Incident is that it's the point in the story when a catalyst propels the story into a new motion, giving it a goal to accomplish throughout the rest of the runtime. To relate it back to films that I've already talked about in this review, in Citizen Kane, after Charles Foster Kane's death and last word becomes public, a reporter is sent out by his news organization to talk to everyone who knew Charles Foster Kane and find out what his dying word, Rosebud, meant. In Jurassic Park, it's John Hammond convincing Dr. Grant and Dr. Sadler to come and see his brand new theme park infested with dinosaurs to prove it's safe. The Inciting Incident usually comes around the 15-minute mark of a movie, and I bet you can guess how far along we are into American Beauty. See, American Beauty is 2 hours and 1 minute long, and just like any other good, roughly 2-hour long film, it has a specific structure that the film follows that allows it to flow while also being as tight and polished as possible. It's quite interesting that a first-time screenwriter for a film and a first-time film director were able to understand and work with that structure, consciously or not. Lester and Carolyn finally sit down, and the Inciting Incident starts. This scene has all the dancing Spartanettes rushing onto the court to perform the routine. If you look closely, Jane and Angela are the only two girls who aren't smiling while performing the routine, and it causes the two to stand out like sore thumbs, especially on repeat viewings. Jane and Angela end up next to each other, which will cause any parent focused on Jane to at least see Angela in their peripheral vision as well. As Jane steps forward with the rest of the girls to grab their hats, Jane clumsily kicks hers away, showcasing her lack of grace compared to the other dancers. But it's this lineup the cheerleaders do. showcasing Angela at the end that just sends Lester off. This film completely changes here, from a dark comedy about suburbia to a surreal, arousal-filled fantasy. An audience member wouldn't expect this scene or any of the others like it to happen just by the trailer, and anyone like me going in blind to this movie could never prepare for what happens next. Conrad L. Hall was the cinematographer that filmed this scene, and he did it at 30 frames per second and slowed down the footage. Doing this gave it this very seductive and exotic feeling that the entire scene has, especially when Angela and Lester are the only two people in frame. And we know that she is 16. We know that this is a teenager in high school, but just like Lester, we weren't expecting this to happen. We're not focused on her age, we're focused on why we're here and what Lester's thinking. This is a comment from Sam Mendes during this scene.
This is the beginning of the replayed hand gestures over and over again. I use this double, triple jump cut thing. I don't know what to call it. Here's a classic example of it, where just continue the movement of the hands in the cut backwards, but to keep a sense of flow. We do that in all three fantasies.
Don't worry, Sam, I got you on this. Sam Mendes uses this technique called temporal expansion during the editing, showing us the same action repeated about 3 times each. Temporal expansion is usually used to tease the audience, or it's used to highlight an action that a character's done, reinforce it into the minds of the audience. See, this technique has us sitting there like Lester, glued to what we're seeing and wanting to see more. Every time that a temporal expansion comes in, it teases us, and we're craving to see what Lester is fantasizing about, possibly more than he is, until Lester and the audience sees Angela open her shirt to reveal not skin, but a sea of American Beauty rose petals flying our way, and we snap out of it. The roses again, symbolizing tempting beauty that we shouldn't fall for, thorns that will hurt us if we touch them. And this look tells it all. Shock, joy, arousal, and most importantly, something resembling a spark of life on his face. This is the insane incident. Even though this is a very hard film to describe plot-wise, it's not hard to argue that part of the plot is Lester falling in lust, not love, with his daughter's teenage friend. It's something so deplorable and disgusting, but almost 100% understandable from what we've seen. It's not like this is a thought Lester's even had before with underage girls, but for some reason, this uncontrollable lust for Angela has changed that, and we understand, no matter how wrong it is. With the insane incident included, I think it's also a good time to conclude this part of the analysis. In part 2, we'll start where we left off from this film, but we're also going to be discussing the first 15 minutes of this movie and going over it. Looking at some of my script writing books and analyzing how this film really does set this movie up perfectly. With these first 15 minutes, everything that you need to know character or plot-wise is foreshadowed or set up. As I said throughout this film, I'm a really big fan of script structure, and this movie is just perfect for it. You know, I don't really need to talk about nostalgia critics since I know that Doug doesn't care if people criticize his work. He believes that reviews are art, and since he makes a living off criticizing people's art, he doesn't see why he couldn't be on the receiving end of it. He's a really good sport about it, so I'm not worried about nostalgia critic. I would like to bring up DeepFocusLens and David Stewart. I have not seen the rest of these guys' videos on their channel, so if they have some good videos or some good reviews, anything like that, I don't know, I only watched their American Beauty one, so I'm not gonna, my criticism on their American Beauty review has nothing to do with the rest of their channel or how they are as content creators. It's more just the one video I saw. That being said, the one video I saw, I really did have high opinions on it because it seemed like they had high opinions on the film too, so especially when it comes to someone like DeepFocusLens who was was very theatrical when it came to expressing her feelings about the movie. I feel like I could be theatrical too while criticizing her review. I think that's fair. We're all just trying to have fun with them. We're all just trying to make this entertaining as possible for the people who are watching. David Stewart, he looks like a very successful guy. He looks very talented. He's written books. He looks like he can play instruments. And obviously he has a fan base. So, you know, he's doing better than me. I'm just criticizing that one video he made where he just reviewed 2 movies way too fast. And, you know, didn't get plot details right. But that's, you know... And then we have DeepFocusLens, who, again, this girl seems like she went to film school, and she seems like she has a grasp on film theory because she has plenty of books just like I do. So nothing to discredit her there. She seems like she knows a thing or two. She's been around the block for when it comes to film studies. So I believe that she probably has some great reviews and probably some great content on her channel as well. I just did not like this review, and I will be calling back to their reviews throughout the rest of this analysis. Whenever they have a criticism, I'll try to address it and see if it's a valid criticism or not, just like I already said. So you will be seeing more of their clips, but again, this is just from one video, so I don't know what the rest of their channel's like. This video took a while to make. My laptop's really old, from 2015. It doesn't sound really old, but it cannot handle all these clips. It can't handle all these audio files. It can't handle the entire, like, this movie being inside there entirely. It just can't handle it. It's too slow. So I will try to make some more smaller videos. Even when it came to my Watchmen video, my laptop could barely work for it. So I will try to make some smaller videos until I can get a new laptop, which is hopefully soon. Please give me feedback on this. I know that there could be some improvements here. Even one improvement, like one criticism I have in my own review, is that I start off making jokes and trying to make sure everything's as entertaining as possible, and then throughout the middle of it, I think it kind of falls off and it gets a little less funny, and then I realize that and I try to pick it back up at the ending. I'm going to try to make sure that all of my videos and all my analysis pieces, they have comedy within them, so I want to make it as entertaining as possible. Especially with long-form content like this, you guys deserve it to be as interesting and as enjoyable as it possibly can. So same thing, I want to make it as entertaining as possible as well. So please give me feedback. I really need it, especially this is like my first big project. Even the Watchmen one, I'm not really happy, not because of my opinions, but because of my lack of knowledge in editing and how bad my computer was working even with that video. So I'm not too happy on it on an editing standpoint. I want to make sure that these videos are good, so please just give me constructive criticism and feedback. I would love to hear it, and because I want to make sure I can improve. And you know, the viewers, you guys, I watch YouTube reviews, and I know how to improve channels by watching them. I know you guys can do the same for me. With that being said, talking about other reviewers, in my Watchmen video, I gave a shout out to Rook, who's my twin. He also has film and TV analysis on his channel, and you should go check it out. He has some pretty good videos. I actually really enjoyed the one from Freddy vs. Jason. So I definitely recommend that one. I want to give a shout out to reviewers in all my videos. So in this one, it's going to be my favorite reviewers who are... In part 2, we'll start where we left off in this film, but we're also going to be discussing the first 15 minutes of this movie and going over it. Looking at some of my script writing books and analyzing how this film really does set this movie up perfectly. With these first 15 minutes, everything that you need to know character or plot-wise is foreshadowed or set up. As I said throughout this film, I'm a really big fan of script structure, and this movie is just perfect for it. You know, I don't really need to talk about Nostalgia Critic, since I know that Doug doesn't care if people criticize his work. He believes that reviews are art, and since he makes a living off criticizing people's art, he doesn't see why he couldn't be on the receiving end of it. He's a really good sport about it, so I'm not worried about Nostalgia Critic. I would like to bring up DeepFocusLens and David Stewart. I have not seen the rest of these guys' videos on their channel, so if they have some good videos or some good reviews, anything like that, I don't know. I only watched their American Beauty one, so I'm not gonna... My criticism on their American Beauty review has nothing to do with the rest of their channel or how they are as content creators. It's more just the one video I saw. That being said, the one video I saw, I really did have high opinions on it because it seemed like they had high opinions on the film too. So, especially when it comes to someone like DeepFocusLens, who was very theatrical when it came to expressing her feelings about the movie. I feel like I could be theatrical too while criticizing her review. I think that's fair. We're all just trying to have fun with them. We're all just trying to make this entertaining as possible for the people who are watching. David Stewart, he looks like a very successful guy. He looks very talented. He's written books. He looks like he can play instruments. And obviously he has a fan base. So, you know, he's doing better than me. I'm just criticizing that one video he made where he just reviewed 2 movies way too fast and, you know, didn't get plot details right, but that's, you know. And then we have DeepFocusLens, who, again, this girl seems like she went to film school, and she seems like she has a grasp on film theory because she has plenty of books just like I do. So nothing to discredit her there. She seems like she knows a thing or two. She's been around the block for when it comes to film studies. So I believe that she probably has some great reviews and probably some great content on her channel as well. I just did not like this review, and I will be calling back to their reviews throughout the rest of this analysis. Whenever they have a criticism, I'll try to address it and see if it's a valid criticism or not, just like I already said. So you will be seeing more of their clips, but again, this is just from one video, so I don't know what the rest of their channel's like. This video took a while to make. My laptop's really old, from 2015. I know it doesn't sound really old, but it cannot handle all these clips. It can't handle all these audio files. It can't handle the entire, like, this movie being inside there entirely. It just can't handle it. It's too slow. So I will try to make some more smaller videos. Even when it came to my Watchmen video, my laptop could barely work for it. So I will try to make some smaller videos until I can get a new laptop, which is hopefully soon. Please give me feedback on this. I know that there could be some improvements here. Even one improvement, like one criticism I have in my own review, is that I start off making jokes and trying to make sure everything's as entertaining as possible, and then throughout the middle of it, I think that kind of falls off and it gets a little less funny, and then I realize that and I try to pick it back up at the ending. I'm going to try to make sure that all my videos and all my analysis pieces, they have comedy within them. So I want to make it as entertaining as possible. Especially with long-form content like this, you guys deserve it to be as interesting and as enjoyable as it possibly can. So same thing, I want to make that as entertaining as possible as well. So please, give me feedback. I really need it, especially this is like my first big project. Even the Watchmen one, I'm not really happy, not because of my opinions, but because of my lack of knowledge in editing and how bad my computer was working even with that video. So I'm not too happy on it on an editing standpoint. I want to make sure that these videos are good, so please just give me constructive criticism and feedback. I would love to hear it, and because I want to make sure I can improve. And you know, the viewers, you guys, I watch YouTube reviews and I know how to improve channels by watching them. I know you guys can do the same for me. With that being said, talking about other reviewers, in my Watchmen video, I gave a shout out to Film Rook, who's my twin. He also has film and TV analysis on his channel, and you should go check it out. He has some pretty good videos. I actually really enjoyed the one from Freddy vs. Jason. So I definitely recommend that one. I want to give a shout out to reviewers in all my videos. So in this one, it's going to be my favorite reviewers who are off-the-shelf reviews. This channel is hosted by Ian and Gary. They have been making these videos for around 7-8 years, and I've been watching them since around 2017. These guys are great. They're great at their job. They're consistent. It's a new review every Thursday, especially if you love horror movies. They got a plethora of them. Other than that, I mean, they have films of every single genre and every single type on their channel they reviewed. They don't care if it's made for TV, a forgotten VHS, hidden gem, or a big blockbuster that just came out recently. I mean, these guys will review it all. And there's, even if you go to the Patreon, they are super cheap. It's a low tier sub is $1 and a high tier sub is $2. And both of them, you get to put in a pick for a movie that you would want them to review. And they will get to it eventually. And I even asked them to review Sybil and American Beauty. And they have reviewed Sybil, and that was a made-for-TV film back in the 70s. Giving them a check out. All their videos last from 30 to an hour and 10 minutes long. I mean, they don't take a break while giving these reviews. And at the same time, it's a nice little yin-yang type of relationship. Because Gary is a bit more analytical when it comes to the films, while Ian is a bit more casual. So you get this really great exchange between these two because of how different they view films and also the way that they like and how they enjoy different types of movies. My second favorite reviewers are Red Letter Media. So the fact that I have off-the-shelf reviews, these hidden gems of reviewers above Red Letter Media, I think that really does say a lot, and I do recommend that you guys go check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really means a lot. I mean, the fact that I could even get this done, and especially before my birthday, I am just really happy about that. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please stay tuned for the next part. And I guess I'll leave you guys with this. If you haven't seen American Beauty yet, go and watch it now, because we are about to go deeper into this rabbit hole. And now as movies put its foot on the pedal, it is not slowing down.